Coast to Coast Rugby is back. It's a Thursday. That only means one thing. That means rugby chat with me and Ella. Ella, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I've enjoyed. It wasn't really a week off rugby because we had that Black Ferns test, which I don't know if you tuned in, but that was a cracking game of rugby. Another cracking game of rugby that we fell on the wrong side of the score sheet for. But no, very excited. I've been buying into that Bledisloe hype this week.
Yes.
Trawling through some of the archives as well of what is, I actually do think one of rugby's greatest rivalries, probably second to the Springboks and All Blacks. So no, I'm very, very excited. How has your week been?
Yeah, I watched the Black Ferns in England on TV. I couldn't get over like the occasion, the number of people there, like brilliant to see. And yeah, this week I've been getting into the All Blacks in Australia as well. It's true. If I think about my childhood and I think about like the most exciting games to watch, you know, England were a great team when I was a kid. They had that World Cup winning side. But aside from them, it was just all Blacks, Aussies, South Africans, and all of the combinations. So something tells me this week isn't going to be up on that level. But yeah, we'll get into it.
Yeah, I mean, it is. That's, I guess, the point, right? I was like, I was going back in the archives. But then also there's been some crazy moments, in recent history. We obviously had that, what was it, Melbourne 2022 with the Bernard Foley taking too long. So it is,
Yeah, that's true.
Some drama.
And we had, I feel like the Quade Cooper last minute penalty, that's not that long ago, is it? Like that's still within living memory.
100%. So should we delve into maybe some teams to start us off, and you can spit from there?
Yeah, why don't you take us through the All Blacks? Start us off.
Okay. I think, not unexpected changes. We see the return of Ethan de Groot into the starting lineup, which I think is big, but also Tamaiti Williams certainly held his own in de Groot's absence. We have Tupuvai retaining his place in the locking setup despite the return of Patrick Tuipulotu.
Right. Tupuvai's been amazing.
He's been so good. And I think he's benefiting from more and more game time, right? Like, I don't think giving him rest is going to get the best out of him at this point. Wallace Satiti also retains his starting spot. Again, position. There was a lot of talk this week about Artie moving to 7, Satiti going into 8, and then if Blackadder was fit, playing Blackadder at number 6. It sounds like Blackadder's still a little bit under an injury cloud, so I think that's why they went with Wallace Satiti, and that's not a bad option, given what we saw in the most recent.
Do you think, sorry to interrupt, but do you think that Blackadder at 6, Artie at 7, Satiti at 8, like, is there any, because that sounds like a really balanced selection to me. Like, is there any desire in New Zealand to see that as like a long-term combination, or?
Yeah, I think if you ask a lot of the public at the moment, or the active rugby commenting public, there's definitely a lot of sentiment towards that, or at least seeing it. Like, we'd like to see it. It's been a while since we've seen Artie at number 7 at test level. I think Razor sort of answered it in his press conference today. He spoke about, well, particularly when you've got Wallace and Artie on the field, the numbers on their backs are only really for the scrum, and the rest of it's about playing footy. So I thought that was quite interesting to hear that, because made about like the balance of the Lucies, and the Lucies are Razor's, we've talked about the structure of their coaching setup. The Lucies are what Razor looks after. So yeah, I think it's something I would like to see, because obviously Sam Cane, I think he's been awesome, but he's leaving in test time max, so there has to be another option. There's been a lot of talk about Peter Lakai coming in. I expect he'll be there on the end of year tour, but I think it's something people would like to see. But I really was thinking about it today. If you're a defense and you've got an Artie coming at you and a behind, like, suddenly you're really having a bit of indecision. So I think
for sure.
A.
Yeah, definitely.
As we go through the backs, the return of Caleb Clark, I'm very pleased about this. I think that was honestly our weakest point on the park against the South Africans in that second test, was our outside backs, which you don't say about an All Blacks team very often. So Caleb Clark returns, such an asset. Will Jordan scoots back in to the right wing, Beauden Barrett to start at 15. Then on the bench, much the same as Safo Almua, Tamaiti Williams. Then we get the big man, Pasilio Tosi, coming in off the bench. He's huge.
How about bringing on Tamaiti Williams and Tosi together? It's like two of the biggest props in world rugby. That is massive.
Huge. Cannot complain. There's been a lot of talk as well about New Zealand maybe not producing big bodies anymore. Excuse me?
Yeah. I'll show you those two.
Yeah. And then we see Sam Darry return to the bench. So again, keeping Patrick Tuipulotu out, I thought that was quite interesting. Luke Jacobson in for Lucy cover, TJ, Anton, Leonard Brown, and then the man that I don't like to talk about at number 23.
Do you think there's a chance that Tuipulotu comes back in for the home game for New Zealand?
Yes.
Like, do you reckon the travel might be the issue there?
Yes, I think the idea is that he hasn't really had a full week of training even. Because I think he's got NPC over the weekend for Auckland, who are doing terribly. Not a good team at the moment, but so I think they want to get him warmed up and back in the team because he is really destructive when he's on, right? Such a big character as well. When I looked at this team, I felt pretty confident about this. I thought this was quite a strong team. Many people going, "Oh, Razor's feeling the pressure. He's running out the A team to take down the Aussies." What did you think when you saw this lineup?
I thought it was like the lessons learned from the 2 tests against South Africa, right? Like all the good selections are in there. Like Clark is there, Satiti's there, Barrett's at 15. I just think, the thing was always like, you don't want to play the All Blacks after a loss. And they've had 2 really, really close losses. They've got a team together that feels like maybe it's starting to take a bit more shape. And I saw the team sheet and I was like, I'm worried for the Aussies big time.
See, I'm still worried about the Australians. Maybe it's just things get ingrained in you as a fan, right? And I just wounded All Black. I think there's nothing worse than a wounded Wallaby. And they're not coming off a close loss. They're coming off an embarrassment, like that is pretty deep. And I saw they've maybe if we switch to the Wallabies team, named White at number 9, who I think, there's many reasons why you would include them, but I think he has the best record of all the halfbacks against the All Blacks. So that I was kind of like, oh. We also see the return of Fraser McWright, which means Tizano out of the 23
completely. Entirely. I was surprised by that. I thought he'd be on the bench.
Yeah, I was also surprised by that. I don't know if you watch James Marshall, the Waddlelad podcast, and he had him on. And apparently when he was initially left out of Joe's squad, he was told, you need to go and pack on the pounds. And he's sending Joe Schmidt mirror selfies of him bulking up. So is kind of part of it. Ben Donaldson not in the 23 after last week. Is that a surprise for you?
A little bit, because I didn't think it was his fault. They couldn't get the ball in the second half, and it wasn't Donaldson's fault that they couldn't defend, and that they essentially gave up the ghost in that second half. So I am surprised by that, but I guess given that it's a Joe Schmidt team, I doubt it's a reactive hooking him decision. I reckon it's probably based in the game plan that he wants to play. And I think they've been quite clear that they're backing Lolosio, right, as the first choice 10. And All Blacks at home, you pick your first choice 10 if he's fit. So I don't think there's much more to it than that. Yeah,
wholeheartedly agree. We also have that great centres pairing. Hunter Paisami comes back, Len Ikitau, and Corumbeti Callaway right. I think that's a pretty classy outfit, really. Returning on the bench, we have Brandon Painga Omosa, who's been away playing for Montpellier for the last 3 years. And I think it's the first time he's back in green and gold since then, which is exciting. James Slipper to become, I believe, the most capped Wallaby this weekend.
Oh, wow. Great achievement for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Salakai Loto on the bench this week. Tate McDermott and Tom Liner make up the halves pairing on the bench as well. So I think this is the strongest team they probably could have put out.
Yeah, probably. Jeremy Williams back in at lock is helpful. I still just think you look at that team and man for man, the quality that's in the All Blacks team, they just pushed South Africa very, very close 2 games in a row away from home. There just isn't the same quality in the Aussies team. I mean, it's a really surface level assessment, but when you look at the 2 team sheets, you just have to be like, my God, they're going to have to pull off an absolute worldy performance to get something out of this.
I just feel like they could. I'm too scared. I'm scared because of the Argentina result as well. Is there one area that you could see a tight contest? Because in my eyes, the scrum, the front rows, that could be a really good matchup in my eyes.
I think, if you look at the Argentina-Australia game, Bell and Tupou did really well, particularly in the first 20 minutes, and Australia competed much better when they were on the field. I worry for the Aussies that when Bell and Tupou come off, Tosi and Tamaiti Williams are going to be coming on for the All Blacks. And like they lost quite a lot of physicality. And I think they lose leadership when those two guys go off as well. And, you know, like it's just everywhere they looked vulnerable against Argentina. They looked vulnerable. They were getting beaten up around the fringes. And then Argentina were able to get the ball wide really, really quickly and hurt them out there. Like, what did the All Blacks try and do to South Africa in that second test? Like, that's exactly the way they approach the game. When you've got Satiti and Ardy there to carry hard around the ruck. And then you've got Caleb Clark and players like that you're going to try and release on the outside. Like, I think you're always guilty as a fan of like whatever happened in the last game. You just think that's going to happen again. And sport doesn't always work like that. But it feels like obviously like Australia ranked way below New Zealand, but the style that both teams are trying to play at the moment, it feels like a bad matchup for me, for Australia, as well as the ranking differential.
Scary hours, potentially. I think, as an All Blacks fan, the only option in terms of what people would be happy with, I say as an All Blacks fan, All Blacks fans collective who aren't always in their most rational and reasonable mind, the only option is like a drubbing, right? That is what has to happen for people to kind of ease off all the talk that has been happening over the last couple of weeks, despite those matchups, as we've talked about, against the Springboks being very difficult to win.
I think you're right. Anything less than that, and people will be asking more questions. Like, people will be saying, how can we not put this Australia team away? You know, we just pushed the world champions. What's going on?
Yes. I did like Ardy said in his press conference today, you know, people were talking about how do you deal with this pressure? How do you deal with being in this situation? And he said, well, I'm quite an optimistic guy. I see this as a great opportunity. How many teams can go through this, maybe take 3 or 4 steps back, but then propel out and upwards into something really special? And I was quite filled with confidence by that. I thought that was a nice mindset. And again, as I've referenced a number of times, a reminder of why I'm not a professional athlete, because I want to be down in the dumps.
I feel like even among athletes, I feel like a lot of the time they give answers like that and it's like paint by numbers, right? It's like, yes, we lost, but chance to improve, go for it. Like every single time he speaks, he seems to have that sort of an attitude. Like he seems like quite a grounded guy. I definitely believe it when it comes from Ardy.
Totally. And yeah, what a guy. What a guy. What do you think then is the pass mark for the Wallabies?
Just don't get hosed. Like that's really all it is. Because like after the last game, there was sort of panic from some people. There was other people being like, look, sometimes this happens. You have to just write it off. A lot of people pointing to times where like South Africa got smashed and then obviously went on to go and win 2 World Cups in a row afterwards. Like as though one naturally follows the other, which I do think is a really weird. I know the wider point people are trying to say is like, look, things can change quickly, and you know if the quality is there, you can turn it around. The question for Australia is the quality there, right? Like they're competing with other sports, they don't seem to have the depth of players that they used to. Yeah, I think if they can put up a performance that shows that the Argentina game was like a necessary blip, like something they had to learn from, something that had to happen to them so this team could get a little bit better. If they can make it look like that, I'd say that's a passing mark for them. But, you know, I think the most likely thing is they'll compete for like a half an hour and then get hosed.
I'd like a half. Oh, do I really want a half? But I need this to be competitive, because I really took offense on behalf of my Trans-Tasman siblings when Ben Youngs came out and said, oh, well, the Lions would be better off going to South Africa. I thought that was very rude, actually.
It was a bit rude. I think Ben, you know, I think maybe they were after some views. But I mean, it's also like the last tour against Australia, they weren't this weak. And I know for like a lot of Northern Hemisphere European fans, the tour to Australia always feels like a bit, it's because it's not the same as South Africa, New Zealand, because their teams are so good. But oh God, like for everyone's sake, I hope the Aussies are in better shape by the time that tour comes around, because it's bad for the Lions too. Like if the Lions go down there and it's not a great contest, you're going to have people chirping up about how the Lions is antiquated, it doesn't belong in the modern game, like all that kind of stuff. It's bad for everyone if they can't compete. So from that perspective, I guess maybe that's the way he's looking at it, right? Is that like it doesn't actually help anybody. It's classic. I saw the headline. I didn't actually see what he said. So maybe I'm judging him harshly. But yeah, I don't know. It's so hard to like get excited about them at the moment as a team. Like I wish I had more positive stuff to say, you know?
Yeah, and that's, I guess, harking back to what I was saying before, going into nostalgia mode is kind of how I've got there, right? And rewatching 2000s greatest match ever and recounting the history. And I feel like, yeah, I have a healthy dose of historical learning of having a very close matchup with them and playing them regularly to be scared. But I can see why to the Northern Hemisphere and people not in this rivalry, it's kind of looking like a deep dive.
You've actually just unlocked a memory. I had a history teacher at school who was a Kiwi. He was like mad into rugby, coached school rugby team and stuff. And he had a giant poster on his wall, and it was a mall, and it was a bunch of All Black players just trampling over one Australian player on the floor. It just said the best place for a Wallaby on it. We looked at that every single day in history class. Like the rivalry used to be so intense, such a powerful thing.
I think it was, you know, how everyone talks about the All Black Springboks rivalry being, you know, but there's so much respect there.
Yeah.
I think it was pure disrespect.
Oh, I think they hated each other. Like they really hated each other.
Who did I see? I was watching a video, and it was when the All Blacks came to play. The Wallabies came to play one of the tests here, and Phil Kearns scored a try and gave the 2-finger salute to the crowd and to the players. And he said that he then went to like a wedding 20 years later, and there was Michael Campbell, who's a very famous New Zealand golfer. I think he won the British Open or US Open. He went up to him at this wedding and said, "I hate you." And you're very brave to show your face here. Like people, it was grudgy, like proper grudgy, bitter. And I think it's the small brother, big brother, you know, that kind of rivalry where, there wasn't necessarily that like, oh, but we respect each other.
Yeah.
No, I just don't like you.
The closest thing to that right now is some of the players' comments in when it comes to Ireland and South Africa. Like I remember like Dialende in an interview being like, "Yeah, we don't love those guys. This is going to be a war." Like I think it's harder to have that kind of genuine rivalry now because everyone has to do media, because everyone has to go on podcasts, everyone has to do all that stuff. Nobody wants to be like, "Yeah, I hate that guy." But you know, it's part of why we love sport. Like anyone who played grassroots anything remembers like there were some people, some teams that you hated, and particularly some people in those teams that you came up against and you just hated their guts. And it's one of the things that made it so exciting. I would love to know, like, I wonder, when there's such a big quality gap, is it even possible to have that?
When they put Nick White on the field, I think so.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, almost like as a compliment to him, you know, like I respect that he goes out there and he's a grub. And I'm sure play us and Dane Coles was in the team, they probably thought the same, right? Those sort of, I don't know. I guess the other thing that maybe is feeding into the rivalry a little bit this time around is that obviously Joe Schmidt is a Kiwi.
Yeah, of course.
Last week, their scrum coach is Mike Cron, who is like our most revered scrum coach, one of the best in the world. He's been out of the All Blacks since 2019, but he's with them for 20 years. So there's that kind of element of, one, is Joe Schmidt or Mike Cron going to come in and give the All Blacks a bit of a taste of their own medicine, you know, hold a mirror up to them, so to speak? What is that kind of going to look like?
Do you feel like Joe Schmidt's ever like sledged someone? He seems like a guy with so much self-control to me. He doesn't seem like the sort of person who'd just throw abuse at all.
Oh, he's such a little, I don't know, I feel like he's such a fragile little, but he's savage, you know? There's talk of what he's like in an environment, but I think you're right, measured.
Very measured and professional and like ruthless when he has to be, but he doesn't strike me as like a big talker. He strikes me as the sort where, like, you know, you'd yell at him throughout the game, and then when the final whistle blows and he wins, like he just gives you a little look, and then that's the end of it. You know,
because he's smarter than you. That's
exactly. Are we gonna venture some predictions?
Yeah. Okay. Last time my manifesting didn't go so well, so I think it's a different approach. Okay, it's in Sydney, afternoon footy. The All Blacks have to win it, so the All Blacks will win it. They will win it. I don't see it blowing out entirely. Within like 7 to 12.
Okay.
Points differential.
What did the Springboks win the first test against the Aussies by? Was it? It was 4 tries to 1, I think, wasn't it?
Let me have a look.
That's where I'm
33-7
at the moment. Yeah, that's I'm feeling like maybe 21, 24, that kind of a margin in the end. Like, I think it might be closer than that for maybe 2/3 of the game. But I think especially when the benches get emptied, especially when, like, because the Australians are going to have to make a lot of tackles. They're going to get tired. So yeah, I'll say 21.
And I think, you know what, we're probably going to go for a few more tries too, and that's been such a difficult part of the Wallabies game, is defending those mauls.
Yeah, well, I wanted to ask you about that. Do you think the All Blacks will just back their maul? Because they could have done it a couple of times against the Springboks and didn't. Like, surely this week, the watchword has to be, having been kept tryless last time, has to be like, we're scoring tries. Go out and score tries.
I think we could see a few Cody Taylor maul tries. He did all his running last week or 2 weeks ago.
How good was he 2 weeks ago?
My mum was like to me, I feel like I've never really paid attention to Cody Taylor. It's the disrespect. I guess, you know, in a field stacked with people like Malcolm Marx, you know.
Yeah, but I can tell you,
so solid for so long.
European fans, from our perspective, it's like you have a lab that made Cody Taylor and Dane Coles, just pushed them out, like, just ready for test match rugby. Like, which one do you want? I could never tell the difference between the two of them. I just knew you had 2 class hookers. Like, it felt to me like it didn't matter who started and who came on. You know, like, they were both really good in the loose. They were both super mouthy. They were liable to annoy you during the game, and they're both just absolutely class players.
I saw someone share a video of a try that Dane Coles scored in 2015 off a Dan Carter like cut in, and the captain was one of the world's best wingers. He was.
Honestly, at times he looked like one. Like, it would, yeah. You know, I know that's. Oh, sorry, you go ahead.
I was going to say, do you know who I want to see have a good game? Because I actually don't think, and this could be for a myriad of reasons, I don't think his form has been that strong, is the old skipper. I think Scott Barrett needs to have a blinder. Obviously, they're not going to drop him, but he's been quiet.
Yeah,
some good turnovers.
Quiet's fair. Quiet. Yeah, some good steals. But I mean, he hasn't been carded either, right? Like, maybe he's been playing within himself a little bit just to try and keep that discipline in check. And, you know, like, I know players will say, like, you know, captaincy, it doesn't really matter. Loads of leaders in the team, all that kind of stuff. But it's got to affect the way you approach the game. Like, you're going to feel responsible for the broader team in a way that you wouldn't otherwise, right? You can't just focus on your own performance. So I don't know. Maybe we see a new era of Scott Barrett. Maybe it's going to be slightly different.
When he took the captaincy, he kind of made quite a lot of comments about being someone who gets quite in his head and really thinks things over, which I don't think is the public perception.
No, I think if you're that big and you're that strong, nobody's ever going to think about you that way.
Yeah, but he kind of said, I'm quite thoughtful in general. And so maybe it is having some effect on him. And it sounds like, you know, people like Artie and Sam Cane, having them there is really beneficial. But yeah, I'd like to see a bit more of a vintage Scott Barrett. I'm sure he's got it in him. Maybe he is, yeah, like you say, finding his feet a little bit in this new role. And he's obviously got Tupou performing very well beside him as well. So yeah, we shall see.
The thing. Maybe it's just a case of you see that your second row partner is on a bit of a heater and you're like, all right, grunt work for me. Like, actually fill in those gaps. You know, it's part of being a team player, right? But he loves a moment against Australia when he folded Tate McDermott to score that try. But we had the shush. Like, he loves a moment against the Aussies.
Maybe we don't give him credit enough for his iconic moments. Those are two, like,
the shush is just like So funny. It's such a disrespectful thing to do to someone. We were just talking about how that's gone from rugby. That's not true. Scott Barrett is keeping it alive.
With the Aussies. It's the Aussies, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like, I don't think I've ever seen someone line someone up so well. That reminded me of the way I used to get hit in schools rugby when one of the big lads would see me coming.
Oh, dearie me. Okay, should we switch over to
Let's do it.
The game that may sew up the rugby championship for South Africa for the first time since 2019, their first full championship since 2009, because 2019 was obviously truncated for the World Cup. Springboks taking on the Argentinians. We have a Springboks team. We don't have an Argentinian team yet.
Not yet. That was an incredible segue, by the way. That was very good.
Thank you. I'm trying to work on saying less this week, guys. So we'll get there. What stood out from the Springboks team? A number of changes, but then a lot of experience still. We're really seeing Rusty say, I got debt.
What I love about what they do is like they just give people chances as well. Like they have a certain group of players that they're like, we're confident enough in all of these guys. And they just try different combinations. And it's great to see. But I thought the players that stuck around, it's really interesting that Jesse Creel is still in the team. And I think what that shows you is they don't really trust anyone else to lead that defense from 13. Like, I think he is the glue there. And I think if you're looking at without a doubt, the international team with the most depth, right? Like they could field 3 teams. But, you know, at that level, when you're on the top, people are always looking for like, okay, what are the slight weaknesses? And I think theirs is if Creel gets injured, they don't really have someone to step up into that role. But yeah, overall, it just seems crazy that they can make so many changes and the team can still look so good. And they've got loads of experience to come from the bench. You know, I'm really interested. Like, I'm so torn because on the one hand, I think South Africa are just going to be a little bit too good, especially with the experience that's coming off the bench. I feel like that's big. I feel like Pollard will kick goals. Argentinian discipline's not always the best. But then at the same time, it's like Contepomi's masterminded one win against everyone so far, and they've tried different stuff, and it hasn't always worked. But like, do I feel like he has a plan in there which could beat South Africa? Of course I do. You know, it's possible. You know, they've only ever beaten them 3 times in history in test matches.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. I would have thought it was.
I would have thought they would have shaved off a few more. Exactly. But yeah, it's only 3 times. So it would be a big deal if they can win this one. Oh,
it'd be massive. And imagine the clash back in South Africa.
Yeah, huge.
Huge. I'm quite excited to see Pollard Fussy as the 10-15.
Yeah.
We haven't seen that before, have we?
No, like with presumably Malia will start at 15 for Argentina with Malia and Fassi as your 2 foot. Like that's just, you're going to get fireworks. You're going to see some amazing stuff from both of those players. I'm such a big fan of Fassi. Like when he gets the ball, he's so dangerous. You know, he just covers the ground so quickly. And I know he's got a little bit to learn maybe in defense and all that kind of stuff. Although sometimes I think if you're the last line of defense in like a big rush system, sometimes someone else has actually made a very subtle error earlier in the play. And because you're the last guy, you're the one who gets made to look like a Muppet. But yeah, I'm really excited to see him go again. Like you say, with Pollard there as well. Oh, did you see what Rassi said about Sasha?
I was going to bring that up.
Hiding his injury, yeah.
He got he was in trouble.
Little public slap on the wrist.
Yeah, for anyone who didn't see, Sasha Feinberg and Ngomazulu had a knee injury prior to the first All Blacks test, after the first All Blacks test.
Prior to the first, and he didn't tell them about it, I think is what he said.
Yes, that's right. And then played on it, and then in the lead up to the second test, he had this niggle, and he kind of came clean about it. And Rusty came out in the press this week and admonished him for essentially kind of not being upfront about his injury. He made it very clear he doesn't play about injured players, which is great for player welfare.
Yeah.
And, you know, Sasha's had a great arrival on the international scene. He's got a lot about him. And I thought for Rusty to kind of come out and say, naughty, big.
Teachable moment, you know? Like, I think it's understandable that you're a young player, you feel like you're getting your chance, and you know you've got a bit of a niggle, but you can hide it. You're not going to say anything. Like, I completely get that. But to have one of the top coaches in the world coming out and just being like, look, it's not the right way to go about things, you know, like, yeah, it's, I wonder if it's like, everyone looks at that and thinks, oh, that's good advice. Or if the lesson people take from this is, well, if you hide it, you do get to play. So, you know.
Teachable for whom, we shall say.
Exactly. And in what direction?
So how long is he out for now? Because I thought I really had to have a little surgery or something.
Oh, he might have to. I didn't see any of the fallout from it. I just saw that he fooled Uncle Razzie, and Razzie wasn't happy.
And not many people can fool Uncle Razzie.
No,
so that,
no.
Yeah. Also, the return of Mani Libbok into the starting 23.
Yeah.
Big moment for him. So much talk. You think about where he was a year ago. You know, Pollard was injured. Where we are now. He's such a magic player. I really hope he is able to, and the team, as in the Springboks coaching team, work with him to recapture that, because when he's on, my goodness.
Yeah,
my goodness.
On. Yeah. Yeah, I hope so too. And just like, you know, what happened to him in that World Cup semi-final, that must have been so tough to take. And you're just rooting for, you see that happen to someone, you're just rooting for them to bounce back, right? Like, you don't want that to be the thing that you're remembered by. You want to come back from that and have people remember that. So I am fully on the Mani Libbok train, 100%.
Choo-choo. Also, news out of the Springboks camp this week that Sia Khaleesi, who was named to travel, he's not in the 23. Apparently the plan was never to have him in the 23 because Rassie wants him up in the coach's box, which we've seen before with Dwayne Vermeulen.
Yeah.
Wild. Well, it's not that wild because my threshold has increased with Rassie, but big move.
Yeah. Did you see that George Ford clip that was doing the rounds when he was talking about like the difference between being a player on the pitch and being able to get the feel of the game and being a coach up in the box and being able to see the whole thing and getting that perspective? Like, I wonder if the overall goal is for Sia as a captain and a leader to take that broader perspective down with him back onto the field the next time he leads the team out. Like, it actually, and I was saying this, I can't remember. I was talking to someone in the comments of one of my videos. Like, what I love about most of the innovations, like, I always find, I work for a tech company. We're always trying to do like innovative stuff. And when most people, when they try and do something innovative, what they do is they just overcomplicate something. Like, that's generally the thought process. South Africans do that sometimes, but more than any team in the world, when they innovate, they just do something really simple. And it means that it's so much easier for players to get a hold of it. It's so much easier to communicate. I just love the way they do things. And like this is a perfect example of it, because it seems like such a small thing, but other teams aren't doing it. Like,
not at all. I have a conspiracy theory.
Go.
Because we all know King Sia Khaleesi, he's been very vocal in his support for women's rugby. And he said, people have asked him, what do you want to do when you finish? And he's talked about, I want to help the women's game. And prior to the Bok women playing the Barbarians, which was the, what's it called? Double header. I've got the wrong word. Curtain raiser for the All Blacks test in Cape Town.
Yeah.
He actually was in coaching them in their trainings, the Bok women. Wow. So my conspiracy theory is that, one, there's obviously a benefit to the Springboks, the whole thing about getting that full vantage of the game. My conspiracy is that Sia Khaleesi is going to be coaching the Bok women by 2030.
You would love to see that.
It would be so good. Imagine.
It would be really cool.
And they're a team because, I don't know if you saw, they announced on International Women's Day that they were basically bringing in professionalism into Springbok women's rugby. They announced, I think they're looking to have up to 150 contracts. I don't know whether those are all full-time, but 150 central contracts, and looking to start an elite super league to kind of boost the competitiveness of women's rugby. So they're very much planning on
and investing, sounds like.
Investing, yes. Yeah. And, that's always been a little bit in the debate about New Zealand versus South Africa, rugby, whatever. People always bring up, well, the Black Ferns are the most successful team of all time. So, if they can bring their women's team up with Sia Khaleesi as the head coach, obviously with the caveat that there'll be plenty of qualified women who know the space really well, who should also be in line for the coaching.
Yeah, but it's like the exposure he could bring has to be worth one appointment, like one cycle. It has to be worth putting him in there because, like, yeah, like you say, it would be inspirational.
Yes, and he clearly, like, he's invested in the space now. It wouldn't be like he was just coming in for a whatever. He's clearly cares. He has a relationship with the players who are in there already. He wants to see them do well. He's invested in the structures. He goes to games of his own volition. So, yeah, that's my conspiracy for your Thursday evening.
Love it. I hope it comes true. It's not often you say that about a conspiracy theory. Yeah, I'm all aboard. I hope it's real.
The choo-choo. We're choo-chooing today on the train.
Yes, 100%. I also wanted to shout out Thomas du Toit getting a start. Ridiculous for Bath in the Premiership last season. I think a lot of Premiership fans look at the South African squad and they're like, how is he not more involved? I know he's played for the Springboks before, but just an absolute machine.
Yeah, and they've not. I mean, Mark's starting as well.
Yeah.
A hot little minute. Be interesting to see how many minutes he plays in his starting.
I would be willing to bet more than average for a starting Springbok hooker. Would be my guess. Maybe an hour.
An hour would be a good shift. An hour would be a good shift. No, very exciting. And I mean, can we speculate much on the Argentinian lineup at this point?
For sure, they'll go 6-2.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, if you think about it, the front row is pretty settled. Second row, they've been chopping and changing. Like, it kind of depends if they want to play. But again, because they go for the 6-2, it doesn't really matter. Like, those locks are going to play, probably 45 minutes each. Back row, we know, is going to be Matera, Kramer, and Gonzalez. They messed with it once in this championship, and they got absolutely hosed by the All Blacks. So no chance of that this time. And then I think the only question in the backs is, do they go with Carreras or Albornoz at 10?
You would think after last week it's Albornoz, but it's not like Carreras has been shabby at all. It's a great problem to have for, a coach who, for Contaponi, he knows a bit about it,
Yeah, just a little bit. And I always wonder as well with these things, like how much of them is it pre-planned? Where it's like at the start of the tournament, they go like, I want to see Santi for 4 games and I want to see Albornoz for 2 games. You know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of coaches will kind of sketch that out in their heads. So I hope we see Albornoz. He was so good against the Aussies. And I had a suspicion for a while that they'd look an awful lot better with like a natural 10, like a true 10. Because, Carreras can play 15. I think he plays 15 for Gloucester. So yeah, nothing against him, but just I would love to see Albornoz get a shot. And the center battle, I can't wait for. Like, it's going to be Chocobaras and Sinti. They've been absolutely class this whole tournament. And for South Africa, it's Am and Creel. And like, we know everything we need to know about Creel, but Am, it feels like his comeback has been sort of like a bit slow, So can he get back to those kind of peak Lucanio Am levels? Because Chocobaras is not an easy man to face up against. He's like made of granite.
I just hope that the Argentinians are able to play the game they want to play, right? That's when the Springboks are at their best, when they force you to play a game you do not want to play. The Argentinians have some ascendancy and are able to impose themselves and do a bit of what they did against the Australians. At the very least, we're in for a very entertaining game of rugby.
Yeah. But that's the reason, though, ultimately, that I don't think they'll win, because I don't think they're not going to win the collisions. They're not going to get that gain line success that they got against Australia. Like, it's going to be, I feel like the best you can do against the Springboks is parity, and you really have to take your chances when they arrive. And not what Argentina are known for, like being super clinical and being super accurate when it really counts. But, maybe with the confidence of smashing the Aussies, winning away in New Zealand, like maybe they can do it. I don't want to rule them out. I just think that, and I don't want it to sound like I'm disrespecting them. I think they're a great team. But I just think the South African defense is going to carry it.
I just am throwing back to sort of, a month ago where we sat here and talked about Argentina playing the All Blacks, and we sat there and said, no, they won't do it. They won't do it. We've been burned so many times.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I mean, we're two quite realistic people. The Springboks have swept both teams. We've only dropped one this season. Congrats, Ireland. I do agree with you that there's that lingering thought of, has Contempomi been plotting in the background for this game for 8 months, and he's going to pull out an Eddie Jones Japan Springboks?
Yeah.
But realistically, I think the Boks are going home with this. I'll do the same scoreline as I did, or deficit as I did before, of sort of between, what did I say, 7 and 12? Yeah.
I think that's about right here. Like, I think Argentina, there are going to be moments where Argentina really stress them. And like, particularly before the benches come on, I think Argentina are going to feel like they're right in the hunt. But like, South Africa are going to spring Etzebeth, Lowe, and Quagga Smith in the second half. Like, that's going to make a big difference. That's going to make a really big difference. Someone to look out for, though, someone I've just loved watching all championship, is Joaquin Oviedo, the sub number 8 for Argentina. He's an absolute unit. This guy's a tank. I don't know where he came from. Just running over people for fun. So much fun. Like, that's what we love seeing for number 8. It's, yeah, I need to find out where he plays, where he came from, because he looks like a proper prospect.
Oh, huge. And, you know, you can see why then there's that shifting that happens and Kramer going into this.
Yeah.
Because we've got now not so many, you know, someone else who can fit into the mix, and he brings so much. So what an exciting...
brings something different too, right? Like Gonzalez is much more like a languid, like he's still a beast, but he's more of like a languid runner, more of like a skills-based kind of player, like bit of a Swiss Army knife in the back row. And then you've just got like, you know, bring out the battering ram. Now that they're all tired, let's get the physicality in there. I really hope Jesper Wiese is still on the field when Oviedo comes on, because I want to see some of those collisions. That's two of the biggest men around.
2 big bumpers. Let's do it.
2 big bumpers. Yeah, I like that.
Huge. What other rugby is happening? Have we missed anything? Final of the Pacific Nations Cup this weekend also?
Yeah, Japan against Fiji. Fiji and Japan both just sort of dispatched their opponents. Tonga managed to avoid the wooden spoon. And domestic rugby in the Northern Hemisphere is back. The Premiership starts this weekend. And an abridged URC also starts this weekend, but the South African teams aren't playing.
I just remember when I started making TikToks, and I was like, can I actually do this? Am I going to have to pivot after? Is there going to be enough to talk about? And then I realized, I think I'll be fine.
Yeah, it's literally endless. It literally never stops.
But as the Southern Hemisphere, we're only participating for such a small window of that, realistically. The rest of it is you, Northern Hemisphere, just carrying the torch and playing rugby all year round.
Yeah.
Which is great for fans. How good is it? I don't know.
It's a miracle they're not all constantly injured. Like, literally constantly injured. I know they are all injured all the time, but like, how any of them manage to play a full season is beyond me. Like, it's incredible.
I've seen a few people talking, as we talk about, I guess, the URC starting and kind of the length of the season, and obviously it interacts with kind of Six Nations and things, about the Geordie Barrett dilemma for Leinster. It's obviously such a positive and exciting thing, but whereabouts do you see him fitting in the backline? Where is he going to be playing, do you think?
It's really difficult. They've got 2 big dilemmas, actually, Leinster. The first one is like, it's a really obvious answer, but I can see how, from a personnel perspective, it's difficult. It's like, they have to make Kieran Frawley the number 110. Yes. They kind of have to. It's really harsh on Ross Byrne, who's, you know, been a great servant to the club and has been a part of some big moments, but like, Frawley's just looked so good when he's had the chance. And if dropping 2 goals from, you know, 40 odd meters to win a test match away in South Africa isn't enough, then like, what is enough? And then, yeah, the Barrett thing is like, with everyone fit, who do you drop? Where does he go? Like, they might even end up using him on the wing. I know he used to play on the wing for the Hurricanes to great effect. He'd be brilliant under the high ball. If you want to kick contestables, like, get him up there, get him after it. I wouldn't be surprised, because if your back line ends up being Gibson Park, Frawley, Henshaw, Ringrose, Geordie on one wing, James Lowe on the other wing, and Keenan, like, that is outrageous. as a ridiculous backline.
That's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
That is mad. No, I look forward to seeing how that goes.
If they don't win something this year, it's never going to happen with that team.
It truly is giving the All Blacks of like, since between 1987 and 2011. Everyone was like, how has this team not won a World Cup in 20-something years? Their star-studded team. I think I'm really looking forward to seeing how that goes for Geordie and what he brings back. What he learns, and I guess battle-hardened. I was talking to someone the other day about, Leicester Fainga'anuku being in the top 14 at the moment, playing on in fine form. He's going to, potentially, after his contract ends with Toulon in 2025, come back to New Zealand as a 25-year-old with all of that experience and hardened from a really tough season of rugby. So, the tides are certainly changing in terms of where players are going to get what IP and what skill. But huge.
Huge is right. And you know what as well? Like, it's really fun to do like fantasy backlines. Where is Geordie going to fit in? But the reality is someone's going to get injured in the Six Nations. And whoever gets injured, Geordie will go in, right? And then like, good luck to them trying to get back in the team. But yeah, it's so exciting. I know everybody else in Europe hates Leinster, and I can see why. But I am so excited.
They're the Crusaders. It's the same kind of.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, they're not though, because they haven't won everything. That's the difference. Like, nobody hates to lose. I'm sure in France they hate to lose, but nobody in the rest of Europe hates to lose. I guess they hate Leinster because we have the Crusaders attitude, but the trophy cabinet is, maybe a little bit bare.
You said it, not me. Speaking of Toulouse, sorry, we're doing fun facts. We're spinning random things we saw on the internet.
Amazing.
Wanting to have a little run around at centre. Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw that.
What a guy.
It's just like, I think he just gets bored,
He's maxed out,
Yeah, he's playing the game the way it's supposed to be played. That's for losers. Like, I want to go in every position. I want to try all the different formats.
He'll be in rugby league before we know it.
Oh, please no. Let's hope he can stay in Union. Oh, really, really excited to watch some more. It's become a bit easier to watch the top 14 in the UK. So I'm really excited to watch some more top 14 this season. There's so many good players there. Although, one for the Ireland fans. I don't know how many Ireland fans watch this, but Joey Carberry went to Bordeaux, had a brilliant first half in his first game, and then hurt his hand, and he's out injured again. Like, that poor guy just can't get the luck.
And in a season that long, and attritional, is he out for? Have they said how long he's out for?
They might have. I haven't followed up on it.
You just were
hopefully. I was just sad. I just saw it. I was like, oh. So hopefully it's not too bad.
Well, speaking of injury return, then, gosh, this is like tennis with volleying. Boygaard ran his first Bronco post-injury and ran a 4:29.
That's, fair play, Cam. Fair play. It's obviously recovering okay.
Yeah, I think he's targeting October, that Japan game, so we shall see. But yes, wow, look at us, worldwide rugby stats.
Worldwide rugby stats. You know what? I think I have to get back to my day job, so I reckon that's as good a place to leave it as any.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you so much, guys. It's been awesome. Like, all the comments and all the reaction on the last couple of episodes have been brilliant. Glad you're enjoying the show.
Yeah, like, comment, subscribe, share, tell your friends, tell your parents. We'll be back next week with some reaction to hopefully some more high quality rugby championship games.
Yeah, we'll see you then.